Hey guys, Edmund here. So today I'm going to go over a little bit on how to mod. And when I say that, I mean how to either install and use mods and or create your own mods. And I'm kind of doing this at a high level as to better showcase the tools that you will need and the thought process that you need to have when trying to fix or resolve issues that you may find or have when doing either of those two things. There are a lot of videos out there that show specifically how to make a texture or something to that nature, and they're very, very spearheaded, very specific videos or tutorials on those specific things. I'm not going to go into that kind of level of detail. I'm more going to show you how everything fits together so that you can be conversational on the subject matter and that you can find the tools or things that you need to better create your assets or edit your assets. So to start with, you're going to need strong Google skills. I'm going to be posting this guide up on a Nexus page or something like that along with the video, but I'm going to be covering everything in this guide in my video. But you're going to need strong Google skills, and when I say that, I don't mean it lightly or as a joke. I mean you need to be able to basically figure out what you need to know through research. Research is pivotal, and it's important to do some research before you go and run and ask for help from the community. It's not bad to ask for help from the community. Absolutely not. You absolutely should do that if you are stuck. But give it at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes, do some independent research and try and see if you can figure things out yourself. You'd be surprised what's out there on forums, etc., whatever have you. There's a lot of information out there. So anyways, like I said, you can also rely on the community. Specifically, Nexus has a great community. You can ask mod authors on their mod pages. That's one way to go about it if your question is specifically dealing with a mod author's mod, but a lot of mod authors have been out there for a long time and are completely inactivated, deactivated their account, and their mods are still out there, but they're not around to answer questions or help you out. In that specific case, it's best to go into chat right here and then join the Discord. Accept invite, continue Discord. You can ask your question here. Now, there are some things that need to be said about asking questions to the community. First off, don't ask if you can ask a question. Just ask the question. Keep it simple and high level. If it's like an overly complicated, massive question, keep it simple and high level and say, does anyone know specifically how to script an event like making a player dismount from a horse when something happens? That's specific, it's high level, and you're not blowing up the feed with overly specific things and saying, well, I got this script and it's like some massive thing, whatever have you. So don't blow up the feed. Don't ask if you can ask, just ask. Keep it succinct, keep it simple. If you do have to do something that's going to blow up the feed, use pastebin.com. It's an amazing tool. You can put in a book in here, whatever have you, say new paste, whatever. It'll generate a paste, it'll give you a link, and then you can link people to your load order or to your script or whatever have you. And that's a way to try and keep things a little clearer and succinct and allow everybody to have an opportunity to ask a question or have a conversation without you dominating the entire feed or forum. Now, if you are on a forum, this is really important. If you are on a forum, like you're on a mod page and you're in the comment section, or you're on Steam and you're creating a new discussion topic or whatever have you, and you have a question or a problem, and you figure out the answer, or someone tells you the answer offline, that is to say they personal message you the answer, don't just say, I figured it out, and close it out. What you need to do is you need to tell people what the answer was. You need to tell them how to resolve the issue, right? Like, you're probably going to run into the issue again years down the line when you want to play that game again, or some people will come after you. It's good to help people out and good to have that kind of communication. Anyways, some other tools you're going to need. Mod Manager. You can use Vortex, you can use Nexus Mod Manager, you can use Mod Organizer. Heck, I bet you there's more than just those three. Those are the only three I'm personally aware of. I've been using Nexus Mod Manager forever. I use a community-based, community-run Nexus Mod Manager that's updated constantly and is fantastic. I've never been limited by it. I've never run into any issues with it. That's me personally. Some people swear by Vortex or Mod Organizer. I would personally say, from my experience, Mod Organizer is very powerful and a fantastic tool. If I were to switch from anything away from Nexus Mod Manager, I'd probably go to Mod Organizer. The limitations of Mod Organizer is that some games don't cooperate with Mod Organizer or Mod Organizer 2 without some finagling. My biggest issue with Vortex is that I feel as though it degraded the end user experience and their ability to set load orders or manipulate the installation of game content. And when I say that, I don't mean that you can't. You can. There's nothing that any of these tools is superior to another tool in any other way. Like, they all have the same kind of functionalities and stuff, so it's really on personal preference. You can do whatever you want in Vortex as much as you can Mod Organizer, as much as you can Nexus Mod Manager. My issue is that I feel as though it's a little more complex and convoluted in Vortex than it is in Mod Organizer or Nexus Mod Manager. That's just my personal opinion. But again, other people may say Vortex makes more sense. So it's all down on personal preference. There is no wrong answer. So the next thing you're going to need is Creation Kit. So for Creation Kit, you're going to have a Creation Kit or Creation Kit equivalent. So for Bethesda games, there's like the GEC, the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, which is used for the Fallout series games. But there's also the Creation Kit, which is used for like Skyrim Special Edition. Now, regardless of what game you're looking at or using, the Creation Kit is a fantastic tool if the game developers allow you to have it, but a lot of times the Creation Kits tend to have issues with them. I'm assuming because they give you kind of like a dumbed down community version for the community or something. I'm not exactly sure why that ends up being the case, but it's really, really prudent of you to look into the Creation Kit and see if there's any posted fixes, basically like tweaking the Creation Kit's innies, or sometimes there's like specific mods that will completely overhaul and re-update a Creation Kit and fix them. One specific example is the Skyrim Special Edition Creation Kit. There's a mod on Nexus that it's not necessarily, I mean, it is a mod, but it basically replaces a bunch of files in the Creation Kit file system in your game and resolves near all issues. It's really, really fantastic. And there's going to be something equivalent to that, from be it that or something else. The point is just look into updates for the tool that you're using to edit your game. So the next thing I want to talk about is basically you're going to Xedit, or an Xedit adjacent application. So like in my job personally, Xedit is equivalent to a SQL query for me. We have a application side at my actual job where we can navigate the application using like user-friendly panels and stuff like that, but it's a little slower compared to a quick query I could just run in SQL. That's kind of the equivalent of Bethesda games with using the creation kit versus using Xedit. Xedit is not as user-friendly, not as nice to get the panels and clear, concise things. Instead, Xedit is a lot more succinct, and it's just data. And it allows you to just view that data and edit that data directly. But it's pretty phenomenal because it allows you to make those edits a lot quicker, and in many cases it will save you an immense amount of time. Additionally, it has other purposes and functions and strengths in that you can use Xedit to resolve conflicts or clean dirty edits out of a mod, things like that. I can't speak enough good about the Xedit team. They're amazing, but you should figure out if there's an Xedit equivalent for whatever game you're editing, is basically what I'm getting at. Now, I'm going to quickly go over what I'm saying about looking for conflicts and fixes. Now, if you do have a conflict, understand that specifically in Bethesda games I'm going to speak, but any game's going to have something equivalent to this. There's .esps. .esps are basically edits to the original core game file, which is like the file that has all the database tables and etc. Now, when you're looking at those database tables, you're going to see sometimes values in red. The values in red when looking at specifically Xedit are basically values that conflict with the mod that came prior. So we can see what the base game had, what the update of that base game had, and these are both official. Then we see the mod that I created, Follows Races and NPCs, and what that update was, and then Imperious Races of Skyrim, what that update has. So if I wanted to patch these two games, because I have these edits here, you just click and drag them over, and bam, patched. You're carrying over the values from the previous file into the file that's being read. The last file in your load order is the file that's being read. It's pretty simplistic. So making a patch, really, really easy. That's effectively how to do it and what you're looking at. Effectively, you can only have one thing editing another part of your work. So that means, like, for example here, male height, only one value of male height will be read by the game, and it will be the last value of the last value in the last ESP, which is this, 0.98, which is actually vanilla. So obviously this is resetting the height of the males back to vanilla. So let's see what the next thing is. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm just doing this off the cuff. I'm not really going to do much for editing or anything. I did do this nice type up so I can organize my thoughts, but I'm sorry for any diversion that I may have. It may not be as succinct as I wish it would be. So that's Xedit in a nutshell. Now we're going to look at applications used for specific modification development. Now, there are a plethora of great applications that are free, that are used for mod development, and these applications can be used for literally any mod. Starting with Bay, or Bay equivalent. Bay is basically used to extract a compressed archive from Bethesda files. Now, Bethesda uses a specific type of file compression, and Bay just uncompresses it so that you can view those sound files, texture files, mesh files, whatever have you. You can view those. Otherwise, in the compression format, you can't view those. Now, every game has their own version of a compression file, and you just got to figure out what tool you need to uncompress them. Once you uncompress those files, you can edit them and do whatever you want with them. It's pretty phenomenal. You have a lot of power that you may not realize you have. So anyways, moving down, Audacity. Audacity is a fantastic application used to edit audio. I can't recommend this enough. You can edit your audio, put it in there. You can change the format of the audio, be it mono to stereo, anything. It can create echo effects, etc. So the next thing on the list would be GIMP. So GIMP is great for editing textures. And it's, again, a free application. And you can use it to edit textures or normal maps. I'll get into that in a little bit. The next one would be Crazy Bump. Crazy Bump allows you to auto-generate normal maps. You'll see in this video, that's a normal map right there. So that's Crazy Bump. Notepad++. Now, when I say, I'm listing Notepad++ as just one of the tools, and Papyrus. Now, Notepad++ is basically what you're going to use when you're scripting. I'm listing these things from their difficulty level. It's not difficult to use Notepad++. It is, however, difficult to script, and you will be using Notepad++ to script. I'm sure that probably will make sense. Anyways, what I would recommend if you are going to get into scripting is look into your wiki page or wiki equivalent. Something, there's going to be something out there for you that tells you how to script in the game that you are modifying. I promise you. If the game creators released their code to the community so that people can make updates and changes to that game, there's going to be something out there to tell you how to edit the scripts in that game. In Bethesda, that's Papyrus. And there's an entire wiki and community based around how to script in Papyrus. The next thing would be NifScope. NifScope is used to assign textures to a model. NifScope is free like the rest of them, and it's not, well, that's Nift Optimizer. It's not too complicated to use NifScope. Like, in terms of opening and viewing a model, that's easy. I mean, that's nothing, right? But when it comes to actually assigning the textures in the model, that's when you're going to run into a little bit more of a complication. You're probably going to need to Google some YouTube videos and stuff like that. I wish you luck. I've done it. It took some time, a lot of time, but the payout is definitely well worth it. And Blender, that's the last one. This one is used to create models, which are called meshes. Now, I did this list in the order of the difficulty. Bay obviously is easiest because that's just extracting the files so that you can edit them. Audacity is just click, listen, and edit to your heart's content. It's easy to use, a little more difficult to master, but comparative to the other things, it's really not that bad. GIMP, that's when you're editing your textures. It's really, really easy. I would say it's tied with Audacity. And then Crazy Bump auto-generates normal maps for you. And that's easy enough, but you might want to edit the normal map, and just normal map editing and stuff like that. That's a bit more complex, so I put it under GIMP, although those two things may go hand in hand. Anyways, moving on, game mechanics. So, creation kit tips, like I said earlier, you're probably going to need to edit some of your creation kit files or creation kit equivalent to whatever game you're modifying. I know specifically for like Skyrim, you can't load the DLCs in the main game all at the same time. It will error out and then just like append, which by the way, append just means close down, or CTD, crash to desktop. There's quick any tweaks and fixes that you can apply that allow you to do that. It's a quick Google search. It only takes a second. You'll figure it out. I promise you. For Skyrim Special Edition, I'm pretty sure this is addressed by those Skyrim Special Edition fixes, which is linked in this document. So you don't have to worry about that one. But when you're looking at other games, such as the older version, Skyrim LE, Legendary Edition, or I think some of the Fallouts may still have this issue, you're going to run into that problem. You're going to have to edit your any file. I did actually already show you how to utilize Xedit, so we're good here. I did mention Bay pretty well, so we're good there. Yeah, so some really big tips I want to hit home first are look at the original game files and figure out how those files were created and like the format those files were in, and then try and make sure that anything you create follows that format. Like if it were a texture, make sure that if all the file formats are PNG, any texture you create is also in a PNG or whatever. Like whatever that game is using, you just make sure you match it. Sometimes those game engines, they only can read one specific format. And if you don't have that format, it's not going to read it. Or maybe sometimes it will read it, but it will require significantly more resources to read it. You see what I'm saying? So it's good to know what those are, be it audio files, mesh files, anything. Specifically for meshes, you probably, if you've played the old Skyrim and the new Skyrim, Skyrim LE and SE, you probably have heard how the meshes don't transfer from 64-bit to 32-bit, vice versa. That's another reason why, like, if you try to, you have to convert the meshes to be the format that Skyrim Special Edition uses, if you're using meshes from Skyrim Legendary Editions. Now, it doesn't mean that those meshes are bad. It just means that the meshes will work in the new Skyrim. It's not saying the Skyrim Legendary Edition meshes are bad. It's saying that the Skyrim Legendary Edition meshes need to be converted to a format that Skyrim Special Edition can actually read. That's just one specific example. Now, when you're editing things, use extreme values. One specific example of what I'm saying would be to take a texture and make that texture hot pink or hot green or anything like that. So, for example, going to color balance and then going like that. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Because now when I load up the game, I'm going to see something lime green, and I'm going to know exactly what that texture was editing. Or if there was any part of that texture that was not editing that mesh. Sometimes a mesh can use more than one texture. I don't think that happens too often, but it does happen sometimes. I will address when that does happen on those sometime occasions. But the point is that even if you're 99.9% sure, it's good to just double check by using extreme values. Such as like colorizing something a lime color or a hot pink color, etc. By doing that, you're going to definitively know for sure what you are editing or if you're missing something. Oh, another thing, when using GIMP, just a little tip. If you close out these windows or these little panels on the side, these are your tool panels, and they're pretty awesome, and you're going to need them. Now, if you accidentally close them, you're probably going to freak out and say, oh, damn, how do I get that back? If you go to, if you go to View, if you go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to Display, well, it's not Display, Appearance, I'll probably edit this one away. Yeah. Windows Management. And then you say Reset Saved Windows Position to Default Values. That will get these panels back. So anyways, the next thing I wanted to mention is when creating or editing mods, or when diagnosing a bug, ensure your tests are individually testable, unambiguous. Now, what I mean to say when I say that is that, and replicatable. Now, when I'm saying that you're looking at one specific thing, not a series of things. Like you're playing the game and then all of a sudden you crash to desktop and you saw some weird, funky meshes or whatever have you. Try to address each individual thing. See if the crash to desktop is replicatable, and if you're crashing the desktop every time. And if you are crashing the desktop every time, then see if the weird funky mesh, like let's say there's a character and they're just ambiguous blob of colors and like white exploding out or something like that. See if removing all meshes for that character then removes the CTD. Just specifically spear focus things to one specific thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, focus on one detail. Absolutely spearhead yourself to one specific detail. Not more than one, not, try and address 5 things at once, or, well, if I do X, Y, Z, B, then I get X result. Don't do that. You're trying to look for a 1-to-1 ratio. There's going to be something that's a cause and effect. One specific example I can think of off the top of my head is that Lean Wolf's Better Weapons for Skyrim Special Edition, the Falmer sword has a bad mesh in it. Now, you wouldn't actually notice it like when looking at that mesh of the sword, when you see it's a bound sword that the Falmer used. When you look at the bound sword, the bound sword mesh doesn't look like it's off, but the second the Falmer dies, you CTD, you crash to desktop. And the second you remove that mesh, that sword mesh, from the Falmer, the CTDs will stop. So something is wrong with that mesh. To figure that out, I replicated the CTD and found that it happened exclusively and always around a specific Falmer. It was a Falmer Shaman. I looked at the Falmer Shaman and then figured out what things that Falmer Shaman had on it that would be modded. The only thing that I modded of the Falmer Shaman was the textures of the Falmer Shaman and the weapon of the Falmer Shaman, being that the weapon that they use is the bound weapon, which is edited by Lean Wolf. I first removed all the textures. Then, when I still got the CTD, I knew it wasn't textures. Then I removed the mesh. When I removed the mesh, CTDs were gone. I resolved the problem. All right, one last tip is to have a save game with no mods installed. After the scripted intro or whatever have you, it's got to be a natural stopping point. You want a natural stopping point at the beginning of a game with no mods installed whatsoever. This will help with diagnosing mods and also testing mods. This is very important. Sometimes you can find other users' saves that are unmodded online through a modding site such as Nexus, or I think Gunmetal Network is another modding site. But you just got to find a save that has no mods installed on it. All right, now I'm going to specifically talk about Audacity. Now, when you're using Audacity to create or edit audio files, you want to make sure that the audio files, like I mentioned before, are the same format. And the things that are really important about that format are mono versus stereo versus bitrate versus the actual file type, be it MP3, WAM, etc. The games a lot of games have very, very specific formats, and you have to hit every single box. You have to make sure that it's exactly the same format that the original game used. And another thing, it doesn't matter what device you use to record. What matters is the application you use to record. iTalk is a fantastic recording application, for example, and it's free. I could have a $1,000 microphone, and I promise you, you're probably not going to hear too much of a difference between that microphone and my $20 headset that I'm using currently. What you are going to hear a difference in is the audio quality if I'm using some sucky quick record memo application that doesn't do any kind of like static filtering or anything like that, versus an application that's specifically geared towards editing out all that static and background noise. All right, so now we're going to go into visuals. I actually laid this out pretty well, I think. And I tried to use an analogy as the human structure, if you want to think about it like that. Your Havoc mesh is going to be, it's a mesh file, which is the object file that you actually see or render in game. But the Havoc mesh is a unique mesh file that you actually wouldn't see a physical body of. And if you load it up into the editor, it's going to look like a stick figure. And it basically gives the motion points and bending points, and it gives objects in game the ability to move or bend. The next thing in there is mesh. Now, I'm going to show you a mesh in NifScope, and I'm going to tie in a lot of things that I've talked about at this point. Now, this right here is the mesh for Metro, what is it? Metro Last Light, Exodus. This is the bear. Now, I used a tool to extract the compressed files of Metro Exodus to view the mesh that they use in that game. I then converted that mesh, obviously, to a Bethesda Creation Kit version so that I can have this mesh in my Bethesda game if I want. Now I'm going to talk on legality quick. You cannot make models from another game unless they specifically allow you to, and I don't know any game that does, but you cannot make a model, or you can't take a model from another game and port it to a different game. Don't do that. You can do it for personal use, like I did for myself here, but you can't post that publicly. That is another game company's intellectual property. Don't do it. But for personal use, I'm trying to showcase the power that you have as a user or modder to change your game any way you see fit. So this also not only showcases what NifScope does, which is basically showcase the actual model, but I'm also showcasing how you can extract the compressed files, find the mesh that you want, convert the mesh that you want, and then utilize that mesh in a different game if you wanted. Now, the mesh itself can be analogous to the muscles. As you saw, it was white, colorless, but it gave a physical body. You're going to actually see that mesh in-game. Whether or not it has a texture, you're going to see that. It is the physical body, it is the muscles that go over the model, over the Havoc file, which is effectively the bones. Now, what goes on top of the muscles is obviously the skin. That's your textures. The textures for games usually look like this. They're flat compressions that wrap around. This is actually for that forest god bear. Now this wraps around the bear and creates the bear skin, effectively. As you can see in GIMP, what I was talking about is you can colorize this, and I could throw in some hints here and change it so it's a little more red, a little more diseased looking maybe. I could make it darker and have a little bit more contrast. And there, I just created a mod. I just edited the texture for this forest god. And now I can put this in my game as long as the mesh knows what the name of this is, and I can trace it back, you know, using the NifScope. It's going to show up in my game, and it's going to look like this with these colorations. It's that easy. Oh yeah, and like I was saying, sometimes meshes will have more than one texture. So I'm going to talk about that right now. So fire in-game tends to be one of those things that uses more than one texture. What I'm talking about is grayscale. Now a lot of times you're going to see a grayscale texture in the in the actual files of the game, and they're just black and white textures of, for example, fire. And what they use is they use a color palette in addition to the grayscale texture that's both tied to the mesh. The color palette's going to look like a solid color that fades into another color or something like that, and it colorizes that gray, the grayscale texture, the black and white texture, and it gives it life. It makes it so that the texture is more malleable and it looks more fluid, which is why I was, for example, mentioning fire. And then the fire is then assigned using, for example, nifscope to the texture or to the model. The final thing I wanted to talk about is normal maps. Normal maps give the light in-game the ability to show shade and stuff on the texture. And this is a normal map. Now you can use Crazy Bump to generate a normal map for a texture, or you can fine-tune your texture in GIMP and edit the, fine-tune the normal map in GIMP and then edit it here. Both are completely valid. You may want to start in Crazy Bump and then edit it here. I've edited normal maps in GIMP. It's very easy. It can, if you don't know what you're doing or if you go a little too crazy with it, it can make it a little odd when sun reflects off the object or person. But effectively, normal maps are just your ability to bounce light off of an object, and it gives the object the appearance of a three-dimensional depth, even if it's flat. So it's a way for game developers to make games run a little bit more efficiently while still looking good. That is the entire purpose of a normal map. So the last thing I wanted to discuss is creating a mod page. I'm going to go real quick on here. I would just recommend reading this bit. This is probably the easiest part of what I'm showcasing. Effectively, you just want to follow a decent structure and organize your mod page well and showcase your mod page well. Utilize a recording device if you want to have a video for your mod page. Otherwise, take really good pictures that showcase what your mod is doing. If the mod's script-based and complex, probably video. If the mod can be better represented in a picture, just take a picture. Or use both. Use an iTalk or equivalent device for recording, like I was saying. That's what I'm doing for this entire video. Use BB code or equivalent. That's basically saying wherever you're posting the mod page, if it's Nexus, they use BB code. It's a different mod source or site. They probably have their own code. Just understand what that code is. Do a quick Google search. Figure it out. And that way you can better showcase your mod, you know, make titles, make things bold, make things larger size, etc. And then if you want to have your mod be very modular and have a lot of options for users, understanding HTML, utilizing someone else's mod installer and seeing how they did it, and then building out your own mod installer, using that as an example, that can help you out a lot. Which, by the way, last point, seeing how other users do things or did things to create a mod, be it script, texture, etc. It's really, really good to use those as resources to figure out how to do things you want to do. So if someone makes changes to a dragon and they make it stronger and you know that it's a table change, which table change for Bethesda is a .esp file, you can just see what tables they edited and edit those and change the damage ratios or change the health of the dragon or add spells to the dragon. You can see how other people did it and then replicate how they did it and then do it for yourself. So if someone added Cyclone to Dervanir and you really thought that that was cool, but you wanted to add a different kind of spell, you can see how they did it and then create your own unique spell and attach it the same way that they attached it. Or you can see how the vanilla game did it and then follow the same steps. Utilizing other people's resources and other people's work, be it vanilla or modded, as a baseline to create your own resources is really, it's working smarter, not harder. You know, I'm not saying copy other people's work. That's wrong. Don't do that. I'm saying seeing how other people did things to be able to build out your own things That is working smarter, not harder. Do that. Anyways, that's all. I hope this helps people out. I haven't seen anything like this out there. I see a lot of spearheaded things on like how to do very specific, overly specific things. A lot of times it's bad information. Sometimes it's good information. But I'd never seen anybody really tell people how things fit together and how to mod. So that's what I was trying to show here. I hope this helps out some people. And I hope it shows what kind of power you have in your games. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.